Welcome to Paranormal Living, formerly known as Light Talk. We have a special guest today, and he's going to be talking about some fun stuff. So let's go ahead and get started. Go ahead and introduce yourself, and welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you very much. I'm Sam Heller. I'm an author, retired teacher, and I am lately a paranormal investigator. The paranormal world has been with me, or I've been with it for many years. And it's only since I retired from the world of teaching and things like that that I decided to pay a bit more attention to it. And it's developed in such a way that I've been lucky enough and unfortunate enough to come across a lot of very troubled people as a result of this. And I would say that, let's say, 80% of the people who contact me are troubled in their own minds, um, and are turning to the supernatural, the paranormal, as a means of explaining their own problems, or in some cases, finding an excuse for. This is not to say that that's always the case. I said 80%. That means I've had 20% where it's genuine. And I'll talk about the genuine stuff as well. But I think it's important that to understand that in this world of paranormal investigation, paranormal activity of any kind, we are dealing with people with certain issues, certain problems, and certain health issues that are dominating their thoughts. And this has led me to explore certain aspects of demonology as well. And this was brought about by one particular case, which is, let's say it's a negative case because it turned out to be no real paranormal factual things going on. But I spoke to a guy who was incredibly troubled and being attacked on a regular basis by a demon. Now, at the time, I wasn't what you would call a demonologist. I knew some stuff. I knew enough to conduct my investigations with authority, but I wouldn't say I was a demonologist. This guy, however, was fully cognizant of every demon you could possibly imagine, and to the point where he was identifying his attacker in ways that were well beyond a standard, oh, I'm possessed by this, or I've just seen a ghost, I've seen a demon. This guy was well beyond that. And it was his testimony and his uh, many phone calls that led me to do the research to write my own demonology for paranormal investigators to carry with them, so that if you do get confronted by these horrendous entities, then you would have a point of reference and you'd have some way of knowing what to say or what to do or how to deal with it. This led me to produce this, and I'm sure my gracious host will put whatever my contact details are on the system. If you're interested, I'm not going to try and plug it and hold up a picture of the book. So this guy had an in-depth knowledge of a particular demon called Moloch, who I found out for a fact it was one that's been used in several horror films, which is where I think he got the information from. And as I did the research and I touched upon certain things where it was obvious he had problems himself, the the research married up entirely with the research that any filmmaker would have done. So I think this guy had become obsessed with a particular demon, attached himself to it, and then sought the help of someone like me to prove it was real. And of course, the only way I'd be able to prove it was real would be to go and visit him and take my equipment and do the normal tests that you would do. But he never wanted that to happen, and that's how what led me to the conclusion that this was his own problems. And eventually, he just drifted away. And I maybe talking about it had helped him, but that was a what we call a negative case. these mental health issues do translate to other areas that we have to be concerned with, such as dementia, Alzheimer's. And one of my investigations has led to finding out someone had um, dementia, which was accounting for things moving around. She was convinced there was a ghost or a poltergeist moving her stuff around, and I was the one who found out it was her doing it because she came up on my night vision camera, and she was in her 80s. It wasn't a case of exposing this as her own problem. I told her daughter, but I also told her that there was nothing malevolent going on, which is what seemed to put her mind at rest, and that was enough. And she was old enough that I don't think she was going to be around that long. And her daughter could make her feel comfortable. And I left it up to the daughter to tell her or to break it to her that this was in her own mind. But I think it was mainly the relief that I could give her that it's nothing malevolent. And I left it at that. So these are two examples where the the issues of health have been prominent. And as a researching demonologist and in other capacities as an author, I did and have done research into exorcisms, and I have met an exorcist, and I also know that even in the very reserved British Church of England, the Anglican Church, um, as well as we have Catholic as well in this country, but we're predominantly Anglican. There are Anglican exorcists in operation, but to get to one of them is very difficult because we have many barriers to that, and they center on mental health. So if you've got a case of, if you think you've got a suspected case, a case of possession, which fortunately I have not come across yet, an actual possession case is referred medically first, psychiatrically second, finally to the church. The church look at the medical evidence, and then the church will contact the person they say that doesn't really exist, which is the exorcist. But they do. There's not a lot of them, but there are plenty, so they can be called upon to help. But I've yet to come across that. But I did do the research so that I have a list of people to contact if any investigation I do throws up something that could be a genuine case of possession. And it doesn't go hand in hand that if you believe in ghosts and paranormal activity in general, it's not necessarily the case that you're going to believe in demonic possession because demons aren't ghosts. As you probably know, demons were never human. Ghosts, residual hauntings, and ghosts, and even poltergeists had a life before that. That was
I
what
have a
happened to them in the end.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
So, on your first experience there, do you think there is a possibility that because he's so attracted to that um, demon, that he could bring that into his own body, that he can actually physically bring it to him, and that it could turn
Well,
real at some point?
that was something that went through my mind when I was having these phone calls with the guy, because I had to be very careful about how I approached the subject of demons, because he had his own knowledge of demons that was well beyond mine at the time. I think I might get him now, but at the moment, at that time, he was well beyond me. But I didn't want to make it into a self-fulfilling prophecy because, according to the law, as in LORE law, the if you open yourself to a demon, you are sending out an invite. Now, this guy says he's being attacked by one, but that doesn't mean he's affiliated. If he was saying he was in meaningful talks with one, that's more of a gateway or two way discussion. If he says he's being attacked, then he's resisting. But if he goes into a conversation with one, if I said to him, just talk to the demon, that's possibly opening up an invitation and a gateway. Depending on your belief systems, you don't want to mess with that. And you might believe in ghosts and not believe in demons. But if you're watching this, then you have an affinity with the subject. You are open to certain things. And if we are open to things, it allows us to be forewarned. And it also allows us to take a step back when it's not our business. Um, Hauntings and ghosts are not a problem. Even poltergeists, they can cause disruption, but they're not fundamentally malevolent. They still have traces of what they were. They're still human beings. And leave aside any possibility of animal ghosts and everything else. Ghosts, even poltergeists, were human once. And that means none of us are inherently evil or inherently anything. We're a product of our society, and we're a product of our upbringing. Nature versus nurture, whichever one you want to go with. I don't know the science, it gets very complicated. But whichever way you believe it, ghosts are leftovers of what we were. And none of us are that bad anywhere. Might be confused, might be mistaken, might be ill, but we're not inherently evil. But with demons and demonology, we're dealing with entities that were never human. They are not part of the our world at all. They are part of a different plane of existence. I won't say higher because it leads you down a different path, but in much of the learning about demons, we're talking about fallen angels, um, Lucifer, Satan, whatever way you want to do it or talk about it. These are all former angels, not former humans. And we have to be aware that anything we think of about communicating with ghosts and communicating with spirits of the dead or the afterlife or any form of transient system, even orbs, anything like that. This is about human spirits, human lives. But with demons, it's not. And if you mess around with that, you're a human messing around with something that's not human. So you really better have a good handle on what you're doing. And it's not worth taking a chance with that. Um, so I was very clear with the guy in question, saying, "Well, you just don't engage. You don't engage with the demon. If you've got one, you you try not to have one. You can just get away from it. Don't interact. It's interaction leads to a gateway, and that's when you have to call in a professional to deal with it. And that's not me. It's not a paranormal investigator. We're not demon. We're not exorcists. Exorcism is a very real thing. Whether it has real outcomes or not is up for grabs. And many of the cases of demonic possession and a successful or unsuccessful exorcism comes from a scientific standpoint and may or may not be real. We won't know that. But if it's enough to distance yourself from the entity, then that's all you can do. That's enough to distance. So yeah, in answer to your question, yes, he could be in a position to open himself up to that, and that's what I had to avoid, and would continue to do so. Even though I've written the demonology, I'm not going to touch one. It's more to know, right? That looks like a. Now we're going to call somebody else. Sometimes you just got to say, no, it's not me. And I think that's a thing for all. If there's any paranormal investigators watching, it's no. If you're not sure you can handle it, then you walk away and find someone who can. That's well, strangely, that's what the movies tell us to do anyway. And the movies are based on these real events, so they're worth listening to on occasion.
Yeah. Yeah. I find out the more I hear, because I don't really watch a whole lot of movies or TV at all. And especially lately. But I find that a lot of those types of movies are really an experience from the writer of the movie. I
Yeah,
mean, there's something that has brought on these, like Star Wars. Do you have all these different beings within? Somebody had to have seen that, especially when it came out. That wasn't a
yeah.
thing then.
There's quite. I mean, there's quite a lot of. There's making movies is not easy. like writing books. It's not easy. You have to do the research, and that research leads you into factual things as well as fictional things. We add the fiction to what facts there are, and there's an important distinction when people talk about science fiction in particular, because there's a big difference between science fiction and fantasy. And I was taught this by uh, back at university when I was doing a thing on movies and such. I had to write a dissertation on um, zombies. A strange thing to do, but it was interesting. So science fiction only occurs when the human is involved and humanity is involved. If there's no humans involved, it's not science fiction; it's fantasy. So Star Wars, which everyone puts it down as science fiction. Star Wars is not science fiction. Technically, Star Wars is space opera or a fantasy because there are no human beings in it. So it's not related to us. So when you have a complete distance between yourself and the subject matter, then it becomes fantasy. So in this country, we have a big tradition of Doctor Who. Everyone watches Doctor Who. It got all around the world. Whenever I've been to America, people are, oh, you're from England, so you must know Doctor Who. Yes, I do. Yeah. Um, Doctor Who is fundamentally based on human beings. He wasn't human himself, but all of his interactions are about humans. And he was exiled to Earth. It's all about us. So the science relates to us. As soon as you take us out of the equation, it's no longer science fiction. Has no basis in actual fact, whereas every other science does. So we have that distinction in the paranormal as well. If we start listening to fantasy stories that don't have a bearing on us, you you are out of the normal paranormal. And this is worth thinking about now. Now I've said that, some people's cogs will be turning about what I mean. But have you ever seen a ghost story that doesn't involve humanity? There are no, as far as I'm aware, there are no ghost stories set in other universes with no humans. It's all about us. Same as science fiction is all about us in one way or another. Now, as someone who's written horror and science fiction for years, it doesn't work if it's not about us. It becomes something entirely different. So if you read Lord of the Rings, it's only half about us. But that's why Lord of the Rings is fantasy. It's not a horror, even though there's monsters in it. It's a fictitious landscape and a fictitious world. And they're not necessarily human, but they're close enough that you can get away with reading Lord of the Rings and thinking you're thinking about humanity. But with Star Wars, the only thing that's real there is the language. And someone does use the term human, I think, somewhere. But they're not. There's nothing to do with us. It's a galaxy far, far away. Now, that might be the only example of where there are ghosts outside of humanity. So I'm saying there's no films that are not to do with humans. If Star Wars and the Force Ghosts and seeing Obi-Wan Kenobi come back as a spirit, that's the closest you get to a distance between humanity and ghosts. It's the only time it really turns up. So that basically made Star Wars into almost a science fiction film. Anyway, I digress. That goes off on a bit of a tangent.
Yeah,
You can
that
tell
happens.
I've done a lot of research. Yeah, yes,
It's just, to me, it's interesting how that all happens because, I don't know if the show's out there, but we had the Jetsons, a TV show. I
oh
don't know.
yes, it's getting a remake apparently. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it's like that came out in like early 70s. So it's
yeah,
like that was way out of the thought. So somebody had to have had an experience with
yeah,
visiting the other side and future or something to be able to write something like that in that day.
yes. It
Just
is
crazy.
true. We are. I think we have been in touch with um, things from the outer reaches. We've been in touch with that forever, and we have
Mhm.
access to it through spiritual. realms as well, because I firmly believe from everything I've learned in what is becoming an increasingly long life, fortunately, that the spiritual plane has no time. There is no relevance to time, space, or anything else. You are completely aside from it. So I do firmly believe that when you die and you enter that spiritual realm, the people you find there didn't even know they'd gone, or they knew they'd gone, but they thought, oh well, they'll meet you. They won't know any difference in time. You'll turn up, and they would have said, "Well, I only died yesterday." They wouldn't know. There's no time there to do. So if there's no time there, it means that anything we might get from the other side, any spiritual communication we might get from the other side, is timeless. So we could just as likely find out something that happened in 1870 as we could from something that happens in the 23rd century. It's no difference to them. It's no difference to us. So any information we glean is timeless. So a séance, it opens it up to the world of séances. Now I know seances are full of fraudulent people and gimmicks and things like that. But there are some real ones where there are genuine mediums. There are people that can contact the spirit world. And there are some people in that position that can contact other entities as well. That's when demonology comes in. It gets nasty. But when you contact the other side, there's no time there. So what you're contacting could be something from the future, something from the past. It doesn't matter at all. There's no time. So if someone's, like you say, they've met the Jetsons, it's very apt. There's a lot of accuracy in there. And I've strangely you mentioned the Jetsons because as a kid, the Jetsons were a big favorite. So were the Flintstones. And I've just watched someone talk about the Flintstones not being in the past. It's in the future of when humanity's fallen, which is why that Fred and Barney are driving around in a car. They pedal with their feet. That's because they know what cars are. It's just that humanity's fallen, and the Flintstones is set well in the future, well beyond the Jetsons. So that's one for your brain to work with.
Wow.
That's quite profound.
Yeah.
Yeah, it gets a bit wild at that point. But that's well away from my paranormal activity thing. So there you go. We've talked about a lot of things that have nothing to do with what I do.
Let's get back on it. So, you have done some investigations with some high profile people, and there's no
Yeah.
need to say names because we want to keep the confidential there. But would you like to talk about some of those experiences that you've
Yes,
had with
I will
them?
talk about I will talk about a genuine one. I'll give you a genuine one where the guy wasn't suffering any mental illness. He wasn't troubled by anything. What he had was uh, what we call a residual haunting. Now, this um, long retired person from sort of a fairly high profile background came my way via another relative of his who knew me. And the only reason I was invited to his home was because of an assured discretion. So I wasn't obviously, as I said, I'd signed the Official Secrets Act and I couldn't talk about anything. So I went to this guy's house, and what he was talking about was the fact that he had someone that he would see coming down his stairs and looking at him and then disappearing. Well, when I got to the house, I realized he had a ground floor apartment. It wasn't a house, it was a flat. We call it a flat, you call it an apartment over there. So it had no stairs. But where it was a three-story building that had been converted to flats in the past somewhere, many, many years before. And there were stairs in the place at one point. And what he was looking at was a staircase and a person walking down it as a vision. He was seeing this. So I went along and I did my research beforehand. We did a preliminary meeting. Then I went along, did my research to find out that the place did have stairs, and I worked out roughly where they were. And it was where he said he'd seen these things happening. So I set up all the equipment, all the things you can imagine, I've got a full spectrum camera. I've got my electromagnetic detector. I've got the little radio thing. I've got listen to the sound waves, the spirit voices, and everything else. I had all that going on, and none of it had anything on there at all. I stayed up. I was in the middle of the night, sleeping on the sofa, in sight of the stairs that would have been there, and I saw it. But did my equipment see it? No, not a thing. So aside from what we see in the movies and what I've learned myself about finding things, the full spectrum camera picked up a minor glitch, nothing of note, nothing that could ever be shown and said, "Oh, look, that's that." What I saw was an absence of light, not a darkness in a bad way, but an absence of light in a human shape coming down a set of stairs that were, I suppose, they were there, but you couldn't really see them well, but you knew they were there. And it came down the stairs, stopped at the bottom, turned to face me in a way that it was a bit weird to work out because we're just talking about a shadowy figure. Turned to face me and disappeared. And I checked all my things. There was nothing. The sounds were disrupted by the noises from the street. There was nothing on there. Nothing on the full spectrum other than a bit of blurriness. Nothing on the night vision. Nothing on the spectral. Nothing. But it was there because I saw it, and I had no proof. But the guy in question, he just wanted to know if it was bad. And I said, no, it's not bad. It's what we call a residual haunting. This is something that's been etched onto the fabric of the universe. Depending on your belief systems and your scientific knowledge, the argument for residual hauntings is that it's someone's physical life being burned into the fabric of the universe by repetition, by their long life of doing that, walking up and downstairs, whatever it was. This guy had lived there, died there, and left his mark, and that mark was now visible. So I said to the guy, I mean, he said to me, what do I do if I want to get rid of it? I said, well, do you want to get rid of it? It's not doing any harm. It's completely benign, has no physical contact with you. We could go through a house cleansing routine, certainly. And that involves, as you probably know, house cleansing begins with cleaning and cleansing and making the house new again, brightening everything up and cleaning away dust and cobwebs, getting back to the basics and starting again. But do you want to do that? This person, that's all that's left of them. And it's a memory and it's not doing any harm. And he said, no, I suppose not. There's no need to disrupt the memory. So we left it. And it was a mutually beneficial relationship I had with this guy. It was just, we both, he got the affirmation that it's not just him. I got the affirmation that it's not just me. And I had a blurry photo on a spectral camera that was useless. But it didn't matter because he was happy with what I'd found and I was happy that I'd found it. And so that was the most perfect, perfect one. And then on the flip side, an old lady, a retired actress who obviously I can't name, in her 80s, came to me via her daughter, and it was dementia, which I managed to catch on camera, which I immediately lost afterwards deliberately, so that she was moving her own things around and going into rooms and forgetting what she'd done and moving stuff around and blaming it on a ghost. And I had to walk away from that and just tell the daughter that your mother's got some dementia, maybe Alzheimer's, but she was really old anyway, so didn't do any harm not to go into that. Didn't have to tell her that she's got dementia. I wasn't going to stand there and say you've got dementia, love. It's not what you want to do. Not doing any harm, but what she wanted to know, just like the guy wanted to know, is there anything bad there? No, it's nothing bad. Nothing bad. And I left it with the daughter, and I presume the daughter, and I think I would imagine by now she's probably passed on anyway. She was very old, but that was a sad one, but it was yeah. I felt like I'd helped at least.
Yeah, help the daughter understand how to
Yeah,
work with her mom and how to get some medical help for her, or
yeah.
going that
Or just
direction
just
with it.
accept it
Yeah,
and let life take its course because there's not a lot we can really do about it.
right, right. That's very interesting on the previous story that nothing showed up on the cameras, because typically it would show up on the
Yeah, I know
camera
that's
and you
really
couldn't see
annoying.
it.
Yeah, it's really annoying because you spend all this money on the equipment and you polish it up and put the fresh batteries in and you're raring to go and you see something and think, well, that's all I've got. All I've got's my memory. Um, and this guy's got the memory and literally the photo I took, I managed to get some was so pointless. I've had better things trying to photograph. I photographed an orb in a pub once. That was great. And people looked, oh look, you photographed an orb. It was a famous pub we've got here, it's haunted. And I managed to get an orb. And I thought, oh, I've got an orb. And everyone went, oh, you've got an orb. And then we went, what do we do now? There's nothing we can do now. It's an orb. It's a little blob of light on the camera. It doesn't mean a great deal. And I've seen lots of orb photography, and I've been sent lots of orb photography, and people saying, "What do you think?" I said, "Well, it's an orb." And yeah, what do we do now? Well, nothing really you can do. It's an orb, and it's probably transient anyway. So it's
Yeah.
very so when you do get a picture, when you do get evidence, most of it's useless because no one believes it. It's like photographing fairies as they used to do. There's no if I actually took a definitive picture of a spirit, no one I can't believe anyone is going to think it's not AI, special effects, Spielberg, or anything else. I'm not going to be believed because I present photographic evidence, which does beg the question, can we ever prove the spirit world? Because no proof is, I don't know, is there any possible proof? There is none, is there? You might be
Not
able to prove
unless you're,
ESP.
yeah, not unless you actually did it.
Yeah. So
Because,
unless you see,
yeah,
unless we show it to everyone, everyone in the world sees it for themselves, it is just hearsay and stuff that could be
true.
easily manufactured, which does make you think, well, what's the point in looking? Because if you believe, if you know, for me, I know spirits are real. That's fine.
Mhm.
Other people either know or they believe. But if they don't know, you can't make them know. You can enhance their belief. You can support their ideas, but there's no point in many ways going to the press with, I found proof of the afterlife because I've got a photo of a ghost. No, you haven't. Like, there's nothing you can. There's no cast iron proof. It doesn't exist. We've lost that ability to get cast iron proof by having things like AI and special effects.
Mhm.
As soon as we got special effects, which we've had since the 1800s in mirror photography and things, right? Adjusting the laptop because it's really hot and running out of battery. Um, as soon as we mastered special effects, we negated all proof that we could find because no one's going to believe it. And
Even
that's
if we
quite a
do,
sad fact.
yeah, even if we
Hmm?
do have that so-called proof, what we're saying, thinking of the Bigfoot that was first caught in 62-ish or so.
Yeah,
I mean, we didn't have AI at that time. We, as a typical human having it, we didn't have it. We didn't have camera or fixing a photo or anything like that. But yet we have a person that caught Bigfoot on a camera, and we're still wondering if it's real.
yeah. We have the same thing here with the Loch Ness monster. We have photographs from early 1900s. The famous photograph of Nessie sticking its head out the water has actually been debunked by certain scientists at some point. We had photographic evidence, but it was never strong enough to to be a documentary. It was never strong enough. And we've now gone past that point, whereas if we did have strong enough, it wouldn't be believed because of our special effects technology. We sort of we priced ourselves out the market because we can't undo what we've developed. And what we've developed is better than the original stuff. And therefore, unless you see the ghost, unless you see it and show it to someone else and come and look at this, and they see it and they go, that's it. It's you and them. That's you and that one person. If you're on camera showing, if you're doing a live feed, no one's going to believe it because they'll just say, God, I mean, how many times do I turn on YouTube or TikTok and there's a haunted house where someone's showing a ghost moving in the distance? Most of them, I'm sure, are fake. The ones that are genuine are lost amongst the ones that are fake. You're never going to find a genuine one because they're steeped in Hollywood stuff. And that's
Yeah.
quite sad that we've lost that innocence of the photograph. And we've actually done our best to destroy the photographs from the past. The famous ones being the fairy photographs in England. I don't
Hmm.
that's it must be over there. You've got that as well. We had a guy taking photographs of fairies, and they existed for years until somebody clever worked out that he'd done a mirror shot and this, that, and the other, and so we lost that. So if we'd have left it alone, we'd have had a little bit more magic in the world because there is magic in the world. It's just that we don't get to see it, and there are ghosts, and we don't get to see them, and most of us get scared by it, so we don't. As for demons, yeah, I'm pretty sure they exist, but you don't want to see them.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I've got a video, like you're saying, I have a video of I got up in the middle of the night and I was like, oh, well, I'm going to just shoot, or it was like evening. And I said, I'm just going to see if I can catch a UFO or something like that, just to play with it. So I'm like filming the skies and well, I'll just look at the backyard. So I scanned the backyard with my camera and I caught something on there. And I'm like, I need a witness. So I called my husband in and he saw this entity in body form, a white body on the camera, but there was nothing outside. So we re-looked at it later on and it was completely different at that point. It was like a red W just kind of moving around. So it didn't even look like the same thing that we saw originally. It was so I mean,
We
you get
we
something
do
that didn't
suffer
even.
with that. We technology is our friend, but it's also our enemy. And we've recently had not a phenomenon in the UK, but we started with climate change and certain aspects of global warming. We have started to be able to see the aurora borealis. So
Mhm.
we have the northern lights in certain parts of the country, not often, and with the naked eye, you can't really see it. You have to be looking through a particular lens to pick up on the faint aurora that you get in England. And that technology has led to people posting loads of shots of the aurora borealis, and you look at them and go, "Well, I live next door to you, and the sky did not look like that." So the technology is enhancing what's there, giving us that the benefit of its abilities to see the aurora, but then we can't see it with the naked eye to verify it. It tends to exist just in the technical world, and we're
Yeah.
relying on enhanced technology. And there's even apps you can get for your phone that fill in the gaps of your lunar photography. You take a photo of the moon through a telescope of the moon. There's an app you can get that recreates it as it should be based on other telescopes things. So you're not getting genuine photos a lot of the time from people. So if someone like me does turn up with a picture of a ghost, it's like signing your death warrant. You're putting it online. No one's going to believe it, and you're just going to get ridiculed for the fact that you've got that. So I sort of resigned myself to living in the fiction world and writing my horror stories and such like. That's fine. And when it comes to paranormal investigation, it's very much between me and the person who lives there. It's for them. It's for me by proxy because I'm there. I'm privileged to see it, but it's for them. And whether they choose to tell their friends or not, that's fine. But are their friends going to believe it? Probably not. So they'll look at the evidence. And what evidence am I going to give them? A blurry photo, this, that, and the other. I've had nothing, no evidence that has been good enough to show the world. Not that I would, because that's my thing. I can't. Mine's all secret. I can't show the world anyway. But even if I could, they wouldn't believe it. and it's just not good enough to compete with fake stuff that's already out there. So it does become quite an insular profession. It is just you and your customer, you and your client, and you're helping them. What they do with that information afterwards is up to them, and what I do with it is technically up to them as well because they paid me. So I can't go spouting off about it unless they've actually told me to make a public thing of it. But they're not going to do that because of the stigma that goes with it. See, why do I do this? Why? Why?
To help them out because of their hearts. You have
Yeah,
a kind heart to help them understand that they're
I
not going
I want to.
crazy.
I like to help. Yeah, I like
Yeah.
to help, and it gives me, and it's interesting, and I learn what I do. I learn from, and I enjoy, and and if I can help someone else along the way, then that's great.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. That is awesome. You have a couple more stories we were talking about prior, and this was about a
Yeah.
family retainer. This I was very
Yes,
impressed to hear about. This was cool.
this is what led me into the paranormal world um, altogether. Because as a child, I was ill, and my mother told me that I spoke regularly to a lady in a black dress who would sit in my bedroom and talk to me and keep me company. And I'd talk all about her the following day. And this was I was very young, old enough to talk, not old enough, young enough to remember it all. Um, and those memories were long gone until my own child. I had two children at the time. They got ill, and one was in their bedroom, one was in the bedroom with my wife at the time, and I was kicked out and sleeping on the sofa downstairs so that we could all try and get a reasonable night's sleep. And they were pretty ill, not life threatening, but ill enough. And while I was watching the telly, as I said to you, I was watching The Sopranos on the telly, and the wife comes downstairs and goes into the kitchen. The stairs are in the living room. She comes down the stairs, goes into the kitchen, and I sort of wave. Doesn't occur to me that she's wearing all black, whereas her nightdress wasn't. And she stays in there for a while, so I eventually get up and go in and say, "What are you doing?" You should come down to make a drink or something. And then she's not there. So I leave quickly and go upstairs and find that she's still asleep. Kids are asleep. But this lady in black had been in the house sitting with my children and had come downstairs for whatever reason. And probably that was her exit point. I don't know. She came down, but clear as day. But it was all just out the corner of my eye. I saw her go down and just thought it was my wife going down to make a drink. It was such a profound moment that it brought back the memories of my own youth and when I was a baby and I was ill and I remembered the woman in black and I started to get some memories back. So I went to see my mother and she was, oh yeah, yeah, well we knew about her. She looks after you, and we called it a family retainer, like a servant, but not someone who just looks after the family. And she looked after me when I was a kid, and now she looks after my children. They're grown up now, so the next stage will be when they have children, and if they get ill, is she going to be there to look after us again? And now I'm deliberately not telling my children because they're not really into this sort of thing. They would think I was mad. Um, but if they say to me, "Oh, the kids are ill," then I can ask them, "Anything interesting happen? Has our old family retainer turned up?" So that's a nice one. There's nothing malevolent there. That's just a lady in a black dress. And I said there's cigar smoke in my room as well as a kid. You know, we've often talked about that, me and the family, but it's we think maybe it was her husband. Maybe there's two of them, and because apparently smell lingers more, so we think the lady in black has a husband who smokes a cigar. But that's another one at the side. I'll tell you what. I'll finish off with one less pleasant story, um, which is I said the the whatever latent psychic ability I've got, which isn't much, comes down through my mother's side, and the whole family are a bit psychic. But my mother told the story or met a particular ghost that was famous in the area we lived in. She worked in a tall building, a 5 or 6 story building, which had been a cinema in the old days, back in the 50s. No, back in the 30s, it was a cinema. When she worked there in the 70s, it was an office block and she had an office job. And there was a third floor ghost that everyone talked about. And she would just wander the corridors. We worked out, and through the legends and through everything else, that this was a cinema usherette. So that's, we call an usherette lady who sells the ice cream in the halftime bit between the two movies, however you want to call that. I'm not sure on your side of the pond what they get called, but we used to call them usherettes. They don't really exist anymore. But she was murdered. Um, there was a criminal in there who killed her, stabbed her to death, and she died on the job at the top of the stairs of the circle seating. And we'd worked out that that was what the third floor was. So she would walk the third floor corridors of the office block for possibly for eternity. That's her place. And my mother met her and just sort of said hello, but she didn't obviously didn't reply. So I think it's another a residual haunting, but a sad one. Apparently, the whole place felt quite sad all the time. But there you go. That's another little story from the past.
Awesome. Awesome. I am so excited to hear all these stories, and I'm glad you were able to join us today. And I know you're out running out
My
of
pleasure.
battery power. So I will let you
I
go,
am.
but
I
thank
don't know,
you.
yeah, it's
But
been my pleasure. If you want to
yeah,
talk again in the future, just give me a shout.
absolutely. Whenever you're ready. Whenever you're
Okay.
ready. Well, if
All
anyone
right.
else
It's
out
been a
there
real
has a
pleasure. Nice
story,
to meet you.
nice to meet you. And you can go ahead and take off if you need to for your battery. But thank you
Oh,
again for
okay.
being on the show.
Right.
All
Bye
right.
bye, viewers.
Bye. If anyone else out there has a story you would like to share, email me at Light Talk. I'm sorry, I'm still learning my new email there, but email me at paranormaldana726 at gmail.com. And we will get you on the show, connect, and do all that fun stuff. So we will see you next time. Thanks.